Welcome to a Drop Tent Media production.
Seriously, Dad?
Seriously, Dad? Two father comedians out of Philadelphia. Seriously, Dad?
Dad?
Seriously, Dad?
Seriously? Seriously?
We have the amazing Abbi Crutchfield and Luke Thayer from.
Hey, that's us.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thanks for joining us. So is it from New York by way of Indiana, or is it Indiana by way of New York? I don't know how.
I never knew that either.
No one really does, do they?
Well, I think they get it either way at this point.
Well,
We originated in Indiana.
There we go.
Long
That's what I'm
enough
trying
for
to say.
Indiana, but made for New York.
Heck
Beautiful.
pH balanced for New York.
Love
There you
it.
go. So for everyone there, I met Abbi and Luke at a show at the Church of Satire in Hanover, Pennsylvania. Both very, very funny. They're a comedic couple. They're married, and we wanted them on to find out how they do it all, being comedians, parents, and being in the comedy hub of the world, New York City. So welcome them.
Thank
I think we
you.
already did that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now wait, so now you guys are you have two separate acts. You guys you don't perform together.
Correct.
Right?
Yes, we do separate acts, not performing at the same time.
Had you met?
One word at a time.
Were you always comedians when
on.
you met, or was that something that developed after?
Yes, I mean the very first time I ever saw Abbi ever in my life, it was at an open mic in Indianapolis. I had been doing the open mics for about 6 months, and I saw her first time on stage there. But that was the very first time I'd ever seen her in my life.
What was your initial reaction?
I don't know if I've ever said this on a podcast. I know we've had discussions about this before, but my reaction was depression. I was really depressed because she was so good, and it was her very first time.
Okay.
And anybody that's done comedy, a lay person wouldn't know this, but 6 months it's nothing. It's like if you think of the universe, like a year is nothing in the history of the universe. That's what 6 months is to comedy. It is nothing. It's a blip. But when you have been doing it only 6 months, it seems like you have been doing it forever.
You're halfway to famous.
Yes.
Once
You're on your way.
You're like
You're on your way. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And so I was thinking, man, I'm ready to MC at the club, and I'm doing guest spots, and I think I'm going to be somebody, right? And watching her, I bet if you were looking at me, I probably looked crestfallen. Because I was like, she on her very first time can be better than me after having put 6 months of work. And I was, once I had started doing it, I was doing it, a couple times a week for that 6 months. Like every opportunity I could get in Indiana, which is a little different than New York. You can't do it every single night in Indiana, but I was doing it several nights a week. I was working at the club so I could watch these headliners, and to do that for 6 months and then to watch somebody just walk in off the street and crush and be so much better than me. It was kind of like, oh boy, this is not good.
I remember my first words to you were, "Follow that, weirdo."
That's awesome.
There we go. That's
Oh God,
She didn't just drop the mic; she took it with her too.
I said, "Show's over." No, he's exaggerating because it was a 3-minute performance. And every open micer for the first time at that comedy club, which is called Crackers, by the way.
Yeah, we know that.
Not that I did well under that kind of pressure.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, well, that's what you would think that I would have been the one that does well at Crackers.
So yeah, I mean, but I also stacked the deck. I had some high school friends enjoying my show, and I was no stranger to the stage. I had never done stand-up before, except I think I dabbled in college a little bit, but I had been in plays and things, so I'm very comfortable, talking to strangers and having them be quiet while I take all the air in the room. I like that.
Nice. So was it, I mean, cliche as it sounds, was it just like love at first sight? Was this like you had to see see each
Sounds
other
like she
10
called him a
times?
weirdo. So.
Like how yeah, but Luke could still fall in love being called. I've fallen in love with a lot of people.
What's
call me
amazing is
weirdo.
the Luke is crestfallen, but in it also what's happening is Dreamweaver. It's also happening. It's such a weird combo.
So I was in love with comedy. So that was why it was so depressing. And we then started, as you do in an open mic community, around the country. New York, LA, those are different places. And people listening are probably not in those type of places. Generally speaking, they're going to be in the Midwest, the Southwest, the Pacific Northwest, the South. They're going to be around where I named everything but Australia,
Africa,
literally,
India,
literally any
China,
place
Russia.
but New York and Los Angeles. So they, the communities that happen to form around, doing open mics, doing comedy are pretty small and tight knit. So probably for our community, maybe there was 50 comics, and that would be including probably everybody that kind of even was dabbling in it. And there was probably maybe a dozen or 20 people that were the ones that were really trying. Some of those quit, they stopped trying at some point, but there was a little core group. So you get to know each other. So we got to know each other. We were both dating other people. So we were just friends and comedy friends.
And that night when I had my set, the first thing you said was like, "Hey, that was a really good set." And I said, "Thanks so much." And you're like, "No, it was really good."
Yeah,
it was really good. Yeah, because everybody says good set. So it's like, bro. I feel like you have to say that's really cool to hear. And I agree with you on the camaraderie. I'm really new. I am someone who's had a lot of success early. I was a teacher for 18 years, so I was no stranger to getting up in front of people and talking every day. But it took a lot of what happened over the pandemic to kind of change my shift. And when I think about the friends I've made just in the community the last 2 years have been so impactful. Like even Al, the fact that Al and I are doing this right now and is amazing. And it's a lot to what you said, even though this is an individual sport and we're each going up there to do our piece, there is a level of wanting to see others do well and appreciating a really good at bat, appreciating a really good set, even though it wasn't your set, that I really enjoy that camaraderie.
Right. I think the harder it gets, the longer you do it, the harder it kind of gets, at least in that beginning as you kind of grow into it. And then you can really appreciate someone's effort. So even when they bomb, like, hey, you did your whole time, you withstood that horrible audience member. Good job. So we kind of respect the pain that it takes to go through it.
So you're going through it together too.
Yeah. So at what point do you go from just having other people and just being friends to saying, hey, let's try this. Let's maybe date?
Well, since we both were dating other people, it certainly wasn't right away. And then
I was in a long distance relationship that sadly was, being very, very strained. And he was in a relationship that I think you weren't hot and heavy at that point either. You were cooling off.
Yeah.
It was cooling off. I sound like that's how teenagers were described to me. They're hot and heavy. They're heavy, petty.
Hot and heavy.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yes.
So it was, can I tell my side?
Sure.
Honestly, like at that particular open mic being in my early 20s, there were a lot of guys in their 30s that were just swooping in after the set to give me tips, to compliment me, but then they
we should write together. We should write together.
It's not everybody, because there's only like a handful. We're talking 6 people, but still I was like, not another one. Come on, guys. Yeah. And so Luke was the only one that hadn't tried to do that. He just wanted to talk about comedy, and that was so easy. It was a very neutral zone, and we clicked. Like, we have similar personalities, similar upbringings, and so at the time, we just agreed with a lot of what each other was saying. I remember early when we did finally start dating, Luke was like, "We've never gotten in an argument yet. I just can't believe it." And I'm like,
"Oh boy,
it was probably at least a year of dating, not just knowing each other, dating before we even had an argument." Yeah.
Nice. How long did you date before the proposal happened, or before we got married?
4 years.
Okay, there we go.
Sorry, do you remember?
No, I do. I wanted to
Abby. Take the reins on that. He's like, babe, I'm gonna let you take the reins on this one. Go ahead.
My wife always quizzes me on that.
And then, so you get you moved to New York after you're married. Is that correct? Before you were married,
right? I saved up for a year, and I knew I wanted to go to LA or New York, but I thought at the time it would be to pursue acting. The more comedians that worked professionally that I met through our local comedy club, the more I decided, okay, stand-up comedy is where it's at. Plus, I did a lot of dinner theater, local modeling, and local acting, and it just, for local commercials, it felt very out of my control and not as fun. Whereas in stand-up on stage, I could always design what I wanted to say.
Right.
I probably had a warped sense of how much control I had over the audience, because I was just like, I'm so good all the time. I can't fail. I hadn't really tanked for months at a time yet, but I was really confident. And so I wanted to go to New York, and I said to Luke, like, when I save up this lump sum, when I hit that number, I'm leaving this town, because he was kind of dragging his feet Do you remember?
Oh.
Well, I wouldn't call it dragging my feet. I mean, I think it would have gotten to dragging my feet. I was too new for me to describe it as dragging my feet.
Okay.
But I did want to move to New York before I even met Abby. In fact, the previous girlfriend, I had said, I'm moving to New York. That's what I'm going to do, because I had seen different movies with New York, and I was like, that's the place. That I watched Seinfeld's Comedian, the documentary.
Oh yeah.
Okay. I watched it once a week, every week for my entire first year of comedy, and so
Beautiful.
just over and over and over again, listen to the commentary, analyzing it. And so I had decided. So the previous girlfriend, I was like, I'm moving to New York. And she's like, she was an actress. And she's like, well, maybe I should move to New York too. Cause she had talked about LA. She was going to move to LA. And I was like, no, I think you should go to LA and I should go to New York. And so when we
It's such a red flag. She was like, okay.
Yeah.
I guess we'll send postcards.
We'll text each other, or what are we gonna do? Yeah.
So did you guys?
AOL Instant Messenger.
AOL.
No, I say dragging my feet because I had I felt I'm an impetuous person, or it's easy for me to make a decision. And Luke likes to really think things through. He's pretty cautious, but I think that's a benefit, and we balance each other out that way, because it helped him to have a deadline, and it helped, me to, I don't know, and later in life to not be so reactionary. But so that kind of, I think, helped him, because he knew he was falling for me a little bit more. Yeah,
that definitely pushed me to alter the timeline a little bit. Maybe I would have waited and taken a couple years. I know, knowing my personality, it's very possible I would have just started working my way up in the local scene, and then had stuck there to some degree, because there's an unknown, and when you have unknown, there's fear. So going to New York, she was like, I'm getting on a plane this weekend and going to go find an apartment. And that's what we're going to be doing.
And both of our families were very leery about New York. I forget what your parents said to you, but my mom was like, do not get a drug addiction. I think specifically cocaine. She was like, please don't start using coke just because you live in New York.
Don't do that. Whatever you do, don't do coke.
I think my parents were like, don't become an atheist. That's more of what they did.
That's what New York meant to them.
Yeah.
So anyway, we saved up.
Or Democrat. That's funny.
Anyway.
I love the dynamic of that's.
So we moved to New York. Comedy careers are going out of control. You're killing it. Everything's going perfectly. And then you really begin to have a family, right? Because you're
fast forwarding like 7 years.
I was going to say, well, my question, my question was going to be, did you think marriage was in the cards for you guys at this point when you were packing up, or was it just like, hey, we're just seeing where this goes. I'm career focused.
Probably a bit of both. Like, we were dating where I can trying to remember exactly my state of mind. It certainly was, we got different apartments. We didn't arrive exactly at the same time. I came a couple weeks later.
I also was very particular about, do not tell them we're dating, like our peers, because I didn't want them to memorize one person's name and then think, oh yeah, that's the other one.
Wow, that's a good play. That's a good play.
And so I was really touchy about that, and I think to a point where it bothered you. I was like, don't hold my hand when we walk.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. I mean, I don't think there's a right or wrong with it. I don't think it matters at all to people. I think that it's something that,
in hindsight,
at the time might seem like a very big deal. Like, oh, we don't want to be, and I've known other, there's a lot of comedy couples. So other couples that are very don't ever, use us together. Don't ever talk about us together. We don't work together. That's fine too, but I don't think anybody cares at all.
But the funny thing was, I remember in high school, the guy I was dating, we broke up, and his uncle, who was very close to, said to him, like during the breakup call, he's like, my uncle wants to talk to you. And I was like, okay, sure. And I was like, hey, and he goes, hey, honey, sorry you guys are going through this. I tried to tell him, she's the type of girl that's going to get married in her 30s. And I was like, I should do that. And then I didn't. I don't know what he knew and what he saw in me, but I did not settle down until I was 27, but still it was like my later years. So there was this element of, I really want to get my ducks in a row professionally before I commit to a family life. But nevertheless, we committed to sharing a space. We got married, then we lived together, then we got a pet right away. So all these things that comedians weren't necessarily doing, like when we did get married, I still felt like we were one of 2 couples that were married at the time. Like nobody was married.
Yeah, and the ones that were probably a little bit further along, like Rich
Yeah, like Rich and
Voss and
Bonnie, yeah.
Bonnie,
Mhm.
Yeah, it felt like something you don't have to
Tom
do that
Cotter,
till much
Carrie
later.
Louise,
Like everybody was staying and drinking after the show
Yeah.
and networking, or they're doing like the UCB, the sketch and improv thing where you
Yep.
stay up till 2 a.m. You're rehearsing with your teams, so there just wasn't a lot of time to have date night. Like we never went out to restaurants because we were performing in them. There was
Yeah.
never any free time at night. Pretty much the way we hung out was during the day, in between temp jobs. Like we would work during the day, but if we had a day off, we would hang then.
And was there a discussion even early on the relationship? Like, hey, we want to have kids. Was that something, we've talked to a few times with different guests that we've had where they either weren't expecting to have a kid or some had planned. Was that something that you guys said to yourselves, like, yeah, even though we have this lifestyle and entertainers, we're definitely going to be a family. We're definitely going to have kids. Or were you thinking like dogs and plants?
That's so funny. I knew I wanted kids since I was a child. Like with baby dolls, I was like, I'm going to be a mom someday. And I was raised by a single mom, so I just pictured doing it on my own. I was like, I'm going to be like that lady. She's cool.
That's funny.
When Luke and I met, he was like, I don't want to ever get married. I think
I didn't look at mom. That's cool.
Yeah. Certainly, yeah. So certainly not. Anyway, but yeah, I think that just made it seem safe. Like, okay, cool. Well, we can date and enjoy each other's company, and whatever happens, happens. Like I didn't think about forever until I think my biological clock ticked and I was starting to get antsy. Like, what are we doing here? He should propose to me. We've been together 4 years. This is getting weird. This sounds
like my wife. That's exactly what she was saying.
I don't know why. I had such a thing about it. Like it was really irritating to me that it hadn't happened yet. And so, but he was very committed to me. Like we saw each other daily. We thrived as a couple. Like we had so much fun. I mean, it was a really, really nice, 20s.
Yeah, the vibe of it
was as painful as comedy can be in your 20s and the rejection. And I was going through a lot of auditions too, because I started entering the commercial acting world. And I was so discouraged a lot. And he was always there to lift me up. So, I pretty much knew I wanted. You were my best friend. That's what I kept telling you.
There it is.
Still am.
There it is.
So I thought,
right.
I didn't really see life without him. But as far as kids go, we waited forever. Like we didn't have kids until over a decade, and everybody's like, you guys wait. There's no rush on kids.
Yep.
Vacation.
We talked about that in a past episode because I had a teacher in high school that I was really close with, and they waited till they were married 8 years before they had kids. And that should not be an unusual thing, because you got to make sure you guys are tight before you get to some of those other pieces. Because that was something I wanted to talk about with you guys, just not even as comedians, but like as a couple, because I live with my wife. We have that kind of nuclear style family, but one of the things we always talk about is like Al does not live with his kids, has that custody piece. Yeah. And so we were talking on the first episode how one of the hardest things, and I was a child of divorce, you can't tell someone how to live in another house. And we talked a little bit about that, but I was like, you know what? Even though that's a challenging thing, it's also challenging when you have two people in the same house in real time, where there might be moments where you have a different approach to not eating your broccoli, or, you know what I mean? Like some of those things that you have to negotiate in real time, that he can make a decision in his house, but he can't dictate what might be happening in the other house. How do you guys navigate parenting now? Like, cause you have, is it a 5-year-old?
I don't want to hog it. Yeah. Can I finish my sentence though? Like at the time when people were like, you guys got a vacation, I was like, we don't vacation. So everything that people were like, you guys should wait and enjoy life without the kid, we already did that. And our practice baby was our English bulldog. We had a dog together, and we butt heads daily on that dog. You're walking him wrong. You're feeding him wrong. You're yelling at him. You're coddling him. It was just back and forth.
Make him sit before you give him a treat. Yeah,
that's a nice intro then to that. Like,
well, I thought it was going to be hard when we had kids based on that dog, but it really wasn't. Like, I've never worked better with somebody than with Luke around our daughter.
Well, we certainly have clashed over the years over dogs way more than over a child. Just that. But it was 8 years for us before we had a child, and then we still have that stuff. Like even before we're recording this podcast, she's in the other room playing with something, and I was like, "This is the plan. We are going to not have any screens until it's time for the podcast. So then she has a distraction, and I come out of the shower and she's on a screen with Abby. And I was like, this is not the plan. Why are we doing this plan?
I said she can read while we're in the podcast. He's like, reading. She's gonna be like knocking on our door 2 pages in.
Yeah. Why did this plan get changed?
And I was like, that's true.
Right. The screen time, that's a, you know, do you guys set all of the controls on the devices or?
We do, but she doesn't get on them on her own, really. So even when she's on an iPad or iPhone or something like that, she's not doing anything else but playing this one game that she likes.
Nice.
And on the Nintendo, I got her a Nintendo DS that isn't even connected to the internet.
That's still too early to me to give her video games. I don't know, because it's a whole culture. You know what I mean? Like now she's gonna want to do conventions.
Oh no, she's not going to be a gamer right off the rip. You have some time.
I had a hard time. I had a hard time. I battled a lot with that, and someone who uses technology and not wanting to wait so long. And I was very caught up in that. And then you know, my oldest is autistic, so she's like 9 now. And so what I realized is a lot of those things for her helped her. It helped me show some of her strengths that I might not have seen in her, the trial and error, her pattern recognition. And so I was so adamant in the beginning. And so now it's like, it's hard because we have grandma in the house. So sometimes I have a plan, my wife has a plan, but now we have a third person with their own plan. And that like those
sole purpose is to disrupt both those plans.
How about it? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's like, so you got to have a strong relationship because you have other variables that sometimes are going to control that for you, or you know, they're at a house with someone else or a sitter. Because I got to imagine if you guys are both gigging, that's got to be difficult waters. And you must have a support system.
We don't. That's the thing.
No, your family is not in New York City.
No, right? We don't have any family here.
We have a different kind. I mean, my perspective is I have got a sister who is a state or two away, who comes in on a train when we both have to work. But usually we have toggled gigs.
You're able to
or say no, or the one that pays better gets priority. But if they both pay decent, we try to loop in a babysitter. It's just childcare really drains the bank account. And in comedy in general, a lot of people don't know the paychecks are not as huge as they should be. Truly, they don't even reflect like what you're providing. And so you have to be really savvy with how you negotiate which jobs you take and how you can get the money up to where it makes sense, which helps because we've been in the business over a decade now. So we know how to, almost 2 decades, holy crap. So we know how to spot the thing that's going to be helpful and what won't be, you know.
See,
we learned that before we had kids, which helps us now.
That's the beauty of you waiting and really establishing yourselves to be able to put yourself.
But see, that's a tough predicament. I'm very fortunate. So my daughter has her grandmother very, very close. She's a retired teacher. I mean,
nice.
that woman should be commanding $110,000 a year from us for how much energy and effort she puts into our kids.
Right, she's a private tutor.
Yeah, because she's a teacher, right? So she knows how to teach. She can see when the attention span's starting to dwindle down. She knows when. She's just really, really good. We're really, really lucky to do that without that support. Like I'm gonna tell you right now, if we didn't have that support system, things would be very, very different for me. Extremely different, because I mean, financially, that's extremely expensive just for like 3 hours a day. For someone to watch a kid is extremely expensive.
Yeah.
And she's doing that Monday through Friday.
And we've seen comedians sometimes bring their kids into the club, and we've had to do it a couple times, but I was really, especially when she was an infant, against it. I would just prefer to cancel all my gigs and keep her home and on a sleep schedule and out of the environment, because one, it was like negative 2 ways. One, she was exposed to a different kind of environment and stimulated at a time when she shouldn't be. And then 2, they were seeing us as like, or at least me, as this woman that's like, can I keep it down? Can everybody just be quiet and stop smoking and stop eating that? And don't, you know, like I wouldn't do that to people, but I didn't want to be viewed as this woman who everybody had to walk on eggshells around. Now, Luke was very chill. He was just like, just bring her in. And let her run around and let her talk to this guy.
Let her have that experience. Yeah.
This guy's cool. He seems like a decent guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I was such a, mother hen. I was like, don't let her touch this. Don't let her look at it. If she cries, and I would listen to her from stage, and it just was, I was on alert. I wanted to be vigilant for her, and I couldn't focus on actually performing. So it never felt right. Even if I could give a good show, it didn't feel comfortable to me.
So I would say Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to say that's a bit of an exaggeration to say like, oh, just bring her in. Our plan was always to not just bring her into these environments because it's an adult environment. And so
it's a buzzkill. It's not fun for other comics to be around an infant longer than 10 minutes.
Yeah, but that's not even, I don't even care about them. I don't care. I do not care about the other comics. Like that's their problem. What I care about is our daughter. And I know that them being, her being around some of them are, comics. Some are creeps and weirdos. Yeah. Some are great, but there's a across the board mixture of these folks. And so it's late. It's past her bedtime. It's not putting her needs ahead of maybe our wants with it.
Yeah. So, well, but even people who are listening to this that aren't comics, like they can appreciate, like we were talking about unwritten rules of like, when you can give some independence, like, hey, if I wanted to run into Wawa, which is our convenience store, and I park and I'm sort of in a rural area and I park to run in, like at what age can I run in without having to disrupt the kid, and I actually looked into it and the law was you can't leave a kid by themselves in the car under the age of 6.
Is that right?
Wow.
That was, okay. And then the law. Then I was like, well, what about at home? Like, I feel like my mom left me at home.
Oh wow!
And it was a different time, obviously the 90s. But like, there is no law that restricts the age at which a kid can be left home alone. However, the parent is responsible for anything that happens to them during that time. I found that interesting.
So if you take a trip to France without your child,
Home Alone. So like, I was thinking Home Alone, the plot of Home Alone. Like, what? Like, is that scenario? And it's like, you know what? As far as a law standpoint, they did not commit any issues.
That's why the police were so nonchalant about Kevin being left alone.
Everything that Kevin did, though, they would be responsible for
exactly
like stealing, pizza or
shoplifting,
damage,
second-degree burns on a man's head.
That's right. That's arson.
So I got to imagine, like for anyone going to work with their kid, like in the area or in the background, it has to be challenging. Being on stage at a comedy club is like has its own different level of stress. It's got to be extremely difficult to get up there, set them up, knock them down, punchline after punchline when your kid's somewhere.
Well, it's hard to be present
like,
in the room when you're half of those other things.
What is that like as a performer? So I know you don't care about the other comedians, but here you are. You got to do your thing. How challenging was that?
I can compartmentalize. So when I'm on stage, I'm thinking about what's on stage. And so hopefully all the groundwork has already been laid to take care of everything like that. So that by the time I hit the stage, I'm not worried about anything else that's happening. That's, more of my analytical side of going, let's make sure everything's done. So I can't think of a time where I was worried about what was happening with my daughter. And there's only been a handful of times she's ever even been on a gig with us.
I was thinking, actually, I brought her to more room shows than club shows. So in a club, she'd be in a green room and I couldn't see her. In a room, in a restaurant, she could be at the far back in someone else's arms. That's a woman I trust and I can see her, And so then she got a little older. This is such a short period of time anyway. When she got older, I remember doing a live podcast where she could be on stage with me and not interfere because she was distracted by a toy. So, it's just like she's slowly learning about the stage. Like the last gig we did, Simsbury, it was in Simsbury, Connecticut. She came, she was bouncing on the hotel bed. She was, talking to all the staff members. She was very on. And then on stage, she kept asking, can I come out there? Can I come out there in between the other comics? And then I said, no, but afterwards we're all going to go on stage and you can come then. And so she came on stage and she wanted to grab the mic and talk, how kids do.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Now she's kind of getting what we do for a living. She's telling jokes at the dinner table. She's like testing puns. She's 5, but she knows like play on words.
Beautiful.
She's like, is that a good one? Can I do that one? And I'm like, just, you don't want to work at 5. All right.
Enjoy your youth, kid. All right.
I went into my daughter's classroom. My youngest is in 1st grade and she's very mature, being 6, like, doing the same kind of things you were doing. I was joking earlier on another podcast and we were talking about, she said to me, Dad, Home Depot. And she thought it was funny. She's like, you should put that in your act, but like make it funny. And it's like, but she gets what I do. It's kind of fun for that too. Cause I do talk about my kids on stage. But I have kind of rules. I wanted to hear kind of yours, you guys being more experienced. I really wanted to, did anything change? Like, did your material change once you became a parent? Do you use anything from parenting in your stage and your performance?
Yes to both. Was that both questions?
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
One question.
There were 5 questions.
Yeah,
there were
Anything
5.
changed,
There were
you
5.
changed.
Yeah.
The kid
You can see
changed.
how hard my wife has to work living with me.
My work has always been autobiographical, or my act has, so when I owned a pet, I would write jokes about pet ownership. When I worked a day job, I'd write office jokes. So similarly, when I became a new mom, talked about delivery, talked about breastfeeding. When that was over, talked about, childcare, babysitting. And so, I think it's funny when we go on the road together and I'll open for Luke. Some audience members will piece it together, like, wow, they both have kids. It's 4. Oh, they both have, a kid that's a daughter. They both have partners that are the other race. I wonder if, and it's, I'm surprised it's not all of them in the moment going, we get it, you guys are together. But it's only usually one woman dressed as Jessica Fletcher on Murder, She Wrote. Who's like, are you two a couple?
She's got a little notebook she's been scratching in.
You're right. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we incorporate, but our styles are different. Mine, I still have trouble describing mine. Mine's easygoing, general audiences. His is antagonistic, mean, rude.
I don't think that's correct.
It's not at all. He's very funny. He's sharp. We're both quick-witted.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, our material does not sound identical. We don't open with the exact same setups about
but you allow your life to come on stage.
Yes.
We have different voices in comedy, so yeah.
But we do talk about our daughter, like both of us, and we don't use specifics, or we don't use her name, we don't use stuff like that. But I talk about, really it's more like being a dad, and so therefore having a daughter is kind of, or a child is a prerequisite to being a dad. So I can't talk about being a dad without there being some talk about a child in this mix.
It's also probably confusing for the audience because I have this bit about being a single mom.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, snap.
That's my persona. I do everything.
She's still sticking to that thing of nobody can know
Nobody can know you're together, right?
Yeah.
So does anything ever happen where you are like, I'm using that, and then Abby's like, no, I'm using that, and then Luke's like, whoa. That happened on my watch, and you guys are like going back and forth, or is it just kind of like, it's our family, use it all?
He'll say something really makes me laugh, and I'm like, you should use that. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, can I use that if you're not going to?
Yeah, right. That's the unsaid. That's cool. I don't have to worry about that. My wife will pitch me somewhere. She'll send me a text of something ridiculous my daughter will have said somewhere without her filter in, and then I can then kind of cartoon it up and but like my rule is like, because I like to talk about myself, especially her with having autism. I think there's a huge misunderstanding of what that is, so I like to do that. But my rule is she has to be the hero of the joke. Like something has to be highlighting something for her. But like I talk about other things. Like I grew up with my parents. My parents got divorced really young because they both realized they were gay. So now I grew up with 2 moms and then eventually 2 dads. Wow. And so I talk a lot about that piece and how I don't know what a dad looks like because I grew up in a 2-parent household, but they were both women, and it was in like 80 Scranton. So he had to be in witness protection and it was my mom's friend. I was living with the Golden Girls, like whatever scenario would let because I don't want to go to the grocery store, run into somebody and have to give a PhD, like doctoral thesis as to my family tree.
Yeah. That's fun that you can be specific about it. I like thinking about you telling another child of divorce, I had 2 moms and 2 dads. And they're like, yeah, we all did.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, but wait.
You're like, well, hang on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So but because I think there's some things there that I like to explore, because I think it's fun to talk about things that we're uncomfortable, that people are either not talking enough about, which is why we started, with this podcast, because we were like, not enough guys get together and talk about being dads, and like Luke, you had just said, like, you love being a dad, and that, that what is your favorite thing now that you have a 5-year-old? What's your favorite thing about being a dad? Like, what's the thing that excites you the most?
Well, I think maybe you heard what you wanted to hear. I never said I love being a dad. I just said I am a dad.
Clear.
You said I talk about being a dad.
About being a dad.
Clear. That's right.
So
again, my wife hates that I don't listen. Yeah.
Well, we're 5 years in now, Luke. Do you feel like a dad yet? Because for the first 2 years, he kept saying, I don't know what it's supposed to feel like to be a dad.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I've been a mom for 18 years of my life in my mind.
Yeah, I don't. Well, I don't know what being a dad at like 19 would feel like, and then by the time you're my age, you've got like a kid that's ready to go to college or whatever. It's so. I definitely feel like I have a daughter, that she's my daughter, and I love her very much. But I don't. I don't think it's part of what I would put in my bio or my identity. Like, I don't think that's what I think of myself as a defining feature.
I can't even understand it. I can't understand it.
Well, that's the
still, like, the most
compartmentalizing.
important
He was
thing.
talking about compartmentalizing.
He's the best
That's what he's
compartmentalizer
saying.
we got.
He is still very good at compartmentalizing. In Luke's mind, a dad has like a handlebar mustache and a pipe
totally.
and a like horseshoe bald head.
And then, so I'm assuming, Abby, it's very different for you.
Yeah, I don't know what it would be like to not be her mom. Like and I am everybody's mom now. Like, it's at least in the first year of a baby's life, you have so many hormones going through you that even villains on TV, you're like, oh, he's misunderstood. He was a baby.
He just needed a chance. So I wanted to ask you guys this because, being comedians, being out there, social media, all that stuff is a big deal, right? That's kind of the direction of the world right now. I post pictures of my daughter on my Instagram all the time. And I noticed that though you'll post a picture of your daughter, you don't like to show her face. And my sister does the same thing. But I'm just curious to hear your take, like why you chose to do that, why you choose to do that. And do you think that'll ever change? Like when she's 17, do you think you'll change that? Or what do you got going on there? Or what's your school of thought?
Working backwards, when she's 17 or whenever she's old enough to make that decision for herself, to be brought into show business, because that's what our social media is.
Wow.
Is show business.
Yeah.
It's not so that the aunts and uncles can see.
That's an important distinction.
Yeah. Wow.
So our followers are people that would be audience members and strangers. So sometimes friends or people that we've met, but it could be somebody we've never even met in real life. So she's old enough that she can make a decision to enter that world with us, then she can, but she's not like, even Abby and I have a little different. I don't even post her at all. Like, I don't post anything and then cover her face. I just don't acknowledge her.
Yeah,
on
now
social
who's
media.
all, don't tell anybody.
I like that.
I value my privacy. I do think there's a distinction between what I reveal publicly and what I keep, in my friend circle and my text threads. And so it really bothers me in general if I post a picture at home and someone is like, that tin of cookies in the back, I had that,
Right.
Why are you zooming in?
Yeah.
So I try to be mindful of like every little thing in a photo. I'm like, would anybody point this out or, be like, oh, I recognize that grocery bag. You must live at these coordinates. It makes me feel uncomfortable. So,
I agree. I think that's so smart.
People do that too. They're like, oh, you shop at the Whole Foods on da-da-da. And it's like,
and you're like,
whoa, how did you figure that out? Yeah. No, that makes sense. See, my sister, she does that.
Spot. And so it's not that we have so much to hide, but it's my mental sense of privacy that I'm trying to preserve. And the same is true for my daughter. I also don't like to invite someone's opinions into my fact or my truth, like this is my way of being. And then, so let's say I'm trying to lose weight and there's you can have jokes about that. But if I'm actually feeling sad about how I look, I don't put that online because someone else will be like, you can't even talk. You need to
right.
And so on top of feeling sad, you have like a stranger being like, and shut up.
Isn't it funny? I feel like that's a lot like the when you as parents have a decision you make that maybe others don't do or is against the grain. It's kind of like there's a comparison, I think, to being a comedian. Like we all like have a camaraderie, but we might be very different on stage and we still might kind of root for each other, even though it's interesting that they're as parents, like even lay people, not comedians, like when somebody takes a stand on something, there's immediately someone to be like, oh, you guys not putting your kid, what are you, conspiracy theories? Like there's always like, I find it so interesting that people sometimes gravitate to some of those differences and like want you to do whatever they do. And if you're not commiserating with them, then like, oh, you don't, I had a family next to us growing up that didn't show commercials. They wouldn't let the kids, they would come in and they would turn the TV off during the commercials.
Wow. Okay.
You know,
time it out. They got one of those little stopwatches.
It was like serious. Like they were like a step up, like for Mennonite, like a step up from Amish that were just like didn't want commercialism to get into them and didn't want them to be influenced by the ads.
Wow.
And so,
you know, use a lot of psychology, so it makes sense. Like you're not.
Yes, like, it's a lot of manipulation in those things.
But
so
it's like, but those are your kids. You get to make that decision, and you know that's I get it, but it's funny too because people are always gonna like they either project that they feel guilty that they hadn't thought about that, or like if I'm being honest, as you were saying about those, I'm like, those are things I should have thought about. How did I? My internal dialogue as you were talking about it was like, why didn't I think of that? That's so.
I'm not gonna
smart
lie,
and
I felt
logical.
the same way.
You know,
I was
like
like,
if I'm
"Holy
being
shit, am
real,
I
like
doing
as
this
you were
wrong?"
talking about that, part of me is like,
it's anybody's thing. In fact, one funny thing that happened to me was I was talking to a person who's a celebrity about it, and unfortunately, I can't say their name because I don't think it's helpful for me in my career to ever say their name. But it was a woman, and she was saying, you don't put your daughter's face on the internet. And I said, yeah, just preserve her privacy. And then if she, enters into the internet world, she doesn't have like a backlog of all these embarrassing moments online. She's like, well, when you're a real celebrity, you don't really have that option. You have to show their faces. And so I just own it. And I was like, excuse me, I've never seen Julia Roberts' children ever. So why don't you just sit down, little lady?
I was going to say, I disagree with that
disagree.
100. I would say that is so far from true.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, it was just her take on it. And she just felt like I'm taking control of it or getting ahead of it by I'm choosing what I show. And I thought I'm doing the same thing, like I respect her angle. I just didn't appreciate the dig of she was just
right.
All right,
that's just it. That's just
you'll understand when you're big someday. And I was just like,
the agree to disagree. The agree to disagree is the issue on that I have, because like I want to be friends with everybody in the world. So like I'm happy being around people who look and are nothing like me and are from different backgrounds, because I know no one's got a background like I get. So I know out of the gates, I'm not going to magically meet someone that I completely identify with. And I would never, but I think there is a part of us on a human condition level that we can't help but like be like, oh, they're doing something different. Should I be doing that? This constant comparison of that I think just happens. And sometimes people can't within themselves compartmentalize like Luke does so beautifully and put those away. And then they feel like they have to say something.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, that's the bad side of the internet is it makes everybody
or even your Aunt Sally at Thanksgiving though,
It doesn't probably doesn't matter at all. Like, like for example, those kids that you grew up with that weren't allowed to watch commercials, they actually now own an ad agency. So it doesn't matter.
That's
like,
it.
it doesn't matter.
Yep.
It was so taboo. They couldn't help themselves.
Right. But that's how it always goes. You force somebody away from something, you're almost pushing them towards it. I feel
well, also I contemplate, and I wouldn't, because I know I wouldn't get Luke's okay, but I contemplate just putting old baby pictures of her now because I'm reminiscent of that time. And I'm like, you guys aren't going to spot her on the street based on these bald headed pictures. But out of principle, I just don't. Plus, I feel like the audience would be like, what the heck?
Now, did you guys pre-birth, is this something that you discussed before the arrival? Is this something that you discussed after? Was there a conflict? How did that pan out?
I feel like it just came up in the moment of like, oh, we shouldn't do this.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, our neighbor upstairs, she doesn't live up there anymore, but she was the same way. And she works in entertainment, but off camera. And she's very protective of her family anyway. So it had nothing really to do with anybody ever following. I think her Instagram account was private at the time. So it's not like anybody could really see it. But if you were at a birthday party with her child, she'd be like, okay, take a picture of anybody else's kid, but not mine.
Don't touch it.
And I remember one time I took a picture of the back of her child's head and she was like, don't post that one. And I was like, all right. So I probably got the idea somehow from her, but she was in a different, hers was just about her personal feelings and not about exposure via work.
Yeah. That's, and there's probably been a picture of our daughter that has gotten out there afloat. We're not policing other people taking pictures of a group shot or something like that. And don't, if there's something that we can say, release and not sign off on it, we won't. But
yeah, don't tag me in that one.
Yeah. But
I've had my cousin do that to me where I put up a photo of them all playing. Oh, look at all the cousins playing. And he actually called and asked me to take it down.
Yeah. And that's fine. And I respect that. I get that.
Absolutely.
I've taken down people's pictures at my own shows I produce because they don't like the angle. And it's like, all right.
Right.
So, same thing.
No problem.
So who's the judge on that one?
So before I had one last question that I at least wanted to ask, and I don't know if just when you lived in Indiana, were you living in a city? Were you more rural? Were you like when you grew up? Did you grow up in a city? Because now living in New York, I kind of want to get to what it's like parenting. I live in a suburb, so like I couldn't imagine parenting in New York City. Is that something you guys were comfortable with going in, or is that something you had to kind of on the job training?
I taught my daughter the shell game so that she can make money on the subway.
Yeah, 3-card Monte.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which, by the way, I saw that live just for the first. I've always seen it in films, but I saw it live on the train for the first time. And something I don't think people know, certainly the tourists didn't notice this, is that the guy playing and the man he's pretending to lure
their
in
boys
is with him, and so are like 2 other sets of people at the subway doors.
Oh yeah, that's
they're all dressed
thing.
the same. They're all looking out the door to see who's coming in. And I don't know if that's to like tell everybody to scatter when there's cops, or if it's just to like not let your money get stolen. But it's a whole network.
It's a whole.
It feels like being on set of a show. I was like, he's a producer.
Yeah.
He's a grip. He's the cameraman.
Oh my God, that's like when I watched Lost, and they had the guy, the Sawyer, on there, and he did these long cons, and he ended up having someone that'd be like, "Oh, I'll buy those necklaces," and then all of a sudden the other person's like, "Oh yeah, then I want to look at them." That's incredible.
That's
I would not think we don't have. I don't have. If I was to take public transportation into Philly, even though I live close, I would have to make like 7 transfers from one bus stop. Like, there's no way it would take me 2.5 hours to get what I could get in my car in 30 minutes.
See, I think that was a good question, because before you answer, I did the exact opposite. So I'm from Harlem. I was born on 127th Street.
Mm-hmm.
And later on in life, around 9 years old, we moved to upstate New York. And it's actually not even upstate New York. It's northeastern Pennsylvania, which upstate New York sounds so much better, does it? And I can tell you, it is a world of different. Like, you go from being able to ride your bike in the middle of the street because there's no traffic.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to worry about really what time you come home. The other parents are watching you because the town is so small. And it was like, when we moved out of New York, that was a relief as a child. Like, the stress of being a child went away because we were out in the suburbs now, and it was like fun.
So you're saying we're stressing our child out by being here?
New neighborhood.
I'm just saying, you grow up quick in New York because you're in New York City. You know what I mean?
I think we're all learning something. Albert's going to no longer post his child on Instagram.
I quit immediately.
We did grow up in the suburbs of capital city, like it's Indianapolis in Indiana. And I'm just flashing back while you were talking to, speaking of the word flash, a flasher did come to my grade school. So it's like there was...
You can't escape.
That's a real flashback.
There were pit bulls attacking children. That was in the news too in my grade school. And so I don't know if it was just the neighborhood I grew up in or what, but there were the same things you worry about in New York City can happen in a major city in Indiana.
Very true.
You were more city than suburb. I was more suburb of Indianapolis. Like, when I was first born, I was from Missouri. I was born in Southwest Missouri, so very small town there. And then at 5, I moved to Indianapolis, and then a little bit further out when I was in high school. And so I've experienced very small town and Midwestern small town city, essentially, which is what Indianapolis.
Stoplight towns.
I've had all that. And now being in New York City. So it's like I kept getting more urban as I had moved on in my life.
Friends who have a 12-year-old that is allowed to ride the subway, and that still feels a little too early to me.
Yeah, that's
like
by herself.
Duck.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but I mean, she's smart. She's a very smart kid, and I think she would know what to do in case of an emergency. But just that's the thing I'm not ready for. That's why I wish I had a backup kid. I just really wish we didn't wait so long.
Yeah,
because she's my one and only. I just can't. Like, I want to put her in a bubble. But so yeah, I do worry about city safety. But we practice not being on your device when you walk from this train home. And I'm a woman, so when I walk home from the train, I jog home from the train. You know what I mean? Like
sprints.
Do a little sprint. I look at every shadow. If I'm running up behind someone, I clear my throat so they don't like attack
you get all ninja on you.
Yeah.
That's her high intensity interval training. Just getting off the subway and getting home.
There you go.
Right. Well, you fit into the bottom line is wherever you are, you fit into the constraints, whatever. Like, I didn't plan on having an autistic daughter, and I wouldn't have known that growing up, wouldn't have had anybody in my life prior to that. But when those things present yourself, you just do what makes sense in that moment. Now, if I lived in a city, I'm sure, those things would just kind of things just work themselves out.
It's your normal. That's your normal. That's what your life is. That's it. You
Yeah,
don't
it
worry,
is.
you don't keep on trying to make it something else. That's your normal.
Well, I
You live
think
in New York
sometimes,
City.
I mean, I feel like sometimes that's like, I think about what my mom did for so long. She was so afraid to be who she was that she tried to pretend something, or she tried to force this Norman Rockwell stencil on a life. And I think sometimes parents do force things because internally or their past told them that it's supposed to be X, Y, and Z. And how do you as your own person pioneer out from whatever your parents did, and like moving to a city and doing some of those things can really help you kind of push yourself into the deep end a little bit. And I think it's going to make, your child so much stronger to see that both of you continue to pursue your passions. You didn't stop to say, okay, I'm going to be a mom now, so like I'm not going to do this comedy thing anymore. Like I think that the empowerment of that, her seeing her mom, whether she's in a green room or gets to run on the mic or do any of that, I think that's part of it. And we as parents do all sorts of things to, and as someone raised by women who were were nurses and helped people, I have nothing but my mom always worked. My mom still to this day tries to work, even though she probably should be taking it easy, but I value her work ethic, and I think I have the same because of her. So I think your daughter's going to feel that same way about both of you, and getting to see how you guys made her a priority while keeping yourselves a priority. I think that's something after the pandemic.
That's awesome. Thanks. I appreciate that.
Very sweet sentiment.
I'll be watching this
wow.
podcast
That
over
was,
and replaying.
But
this
it's like this.
podcast.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't have got into, honestly, my life like before the pandemic changed me. I flip switched. Things were very different for me, and I have a very different perspective. And I'm now kind of taking a moment to reflect on all of those things to make myself the best version of myself, so that my daughters can be proud of their dad, my wife can be proud of her husband, my parents can be proud of their son, and I can be proud of myself, because I think that was the biggest thing. Did you guys see? This is totally off topic, and I'm so sorry, but like,
Avatar 2.
The way of the water.
Yeah.
I know. I watched Jonah Hill's documentary on Netflix recently.
Yeah,
I think that it just
everyone's talking about it.
affirmed what I was already like, that I was already like doing some of those things unconsciously, but like it's called Stutz, and it's him interviewing his therapist because he wanted to share the tools that had helped him navigate those waters of like fame, but also worried about what people were saying about X, Y, and Z and his weight and other things. Just like, I don't want to waver from my morals. I'm a teacher. I'm a dad. I want my kids to be proud of me, so I work clean, or try my best to work clean. But and I want to, I want to do some of those things.
I tried.
But
I don't work. Point.
Yeah, I mean, all that's very sweet sentiment, but our daughter has already informed us she's moving to Indiana with or without us.
All right.
They rebel so young. She's like, I'm over New York. It smells here. It's so loud. I'm like, this is the coolest city in the world. She's like, no.
I'm moving to Indiana.
And she only knew New York, right? Did she?
She's born in New York, right?
She's born in New York.
Yeah, she's
New Yorker.
officially a New Yorker.
That's so interesting.
She finds the trips back home to see our family and her cousins so idyllic. She's like, there's museums and playtime, and everybody loves
grass
me.
And
the burbs, baby. It's living at. Okay, you guys laughed at me, but your daughter's gonna have a New York City accent. You guys don't have one. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, she already says water.
I'm walking here. She's gonna be one of those guys.
One of those. She slapped cabs already.
Crosswalk. I did want to say, I know that we work together at the Church of Satire once again. Luke, at the end of your set, very great club, Hanover, PA. If you're there, check it out. Luke, you did something that I thought was incredibly innovative, creative. I don't know what the word is, but you have a comedy album. Is that right?
That's correct.
And I believe you're selling copies of the comedy album, right? And what do you do with the proceeds? Yes. What do you do with the proceeds of that money? Because I was blown away when you said it.
Every single cent that I've sold those albums for after shows. So I have a download card. I write a message to whoever just bought it. So every message is different. So I've sold.
So they get a little memento.
Yeah, I've sold over 250 of them because I just went through. I'm done with the first batch of these. So nice. I write a little message, sign them, and then people can download them. But I sell. So every single cent that I sell these albums for goes into a college fund for my daughter.
Okay,
beautiful. Which is funny to me because he'll come home and be like, I sold this many albums. And I'm like, that's money I'll never see. Good job.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't mean the same thing to me, but I'm glad it means something to you, Albert. And it will mean something to us down the line, I'm sure.
I
Or
mean,
we'll be a drop in the bucket because
it's-
college tuition will be insane.
Oh, it's going to be a lot. It scares the crap out of me, but I mean, I think that's beautiful. I mean, you're working towards something that I think a lot of parents are going to struggle with further down the line. But
I kind of like that you set up the scenario. Like they set up the scenario of almost what Louis did with like, he was like, oh, I write a new hour each year. They're like, every comic who's a father, like mother, they need to do it. Like every time, like every single one. Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah,
Hey, you guys doing, Albert? Huh?
I think highly of it
Jay?
because I know that
I
college
know.
is going to be expensive. I don't know what college is going to be by the time my daughter goes to college.
Right.
I don't know. There's so much indecisiveness, but they're ahead of the curve. They're doing more than a lot of people. I mean, I put away money,
I know.
but they're ahead of the curve. And I
Money
think
management
that's
is
a good
so
way.
tricky, especially in this business. Like, they should just offer classes. I know everybody says they should do econ or better finance classes for kids of all ages, but I think in comedy, it's like, if you want to go into comedy, like, how do you make money? Because Albert, you and I in Hanover were talking about, supplemental income, and it's like, you have to explore all of your gifts and all of your skills, and then try to see how you can monetize them, because being on stage for 8 minutes to 60 minutes at a time is just not going to pay the bills. And even when you're working 52 weeks a year, until you are of a certain level, and even then, we know in this business, there's just like an upper percentage, or what do you call it? The top percentage of people.
The
top
1%.
Yeah, we have a 1% comedy that, can do stadiums or can do theaters that aren't comedy clubs. But it's like, if you are a road dog, how do you save? Like, we saved before we left our day jobs, and just put in, like, created a retirement fund and created a savings account, and you'd still have to dip into some, money you don't really want to touch till later to make ends meet. In the droughts, like, there are windfalls and then there are droughts, especially in entertainment. Now I do television. Luke's done television. We talk about pitching game shows or like creating sitcoms, like, down the line. Like, we took classes in everything when we got started so that we could try to get ahead of the money issue. But it's tricky.
It's tough stuff.
But it's a lot of respect for that, because that's something we were talking with a previous guest, Mark Riccadonna, because, like, he was saying, knew he was going to be a comedian. That was plan A. Whereas, like, for me, I don't know that I would have envisioned a life like this, but now I can't envision another one without it. So it's like, now my wife and I had to sit down and say, well, hey, if you're going to be doing this, like, you're giving up coaching, you're giving up some of these other things. Are you able to make that money back? Are you able to do that with all of the expenses? And
The answer is no.
Right.
No.
I was like, no, honey.
Well, you
Not-
overestimate how much I was getting paid as a coach. That's where
what it
you.
is.
'Cause
Oh,
as a
we
matter
know.
of-
That's what we're saying about comedy.
It's
Well,
like, you're
so
gonna be selling
so
for
far I've been all right to stay out of that realm where my wife's letting me pursue that, which is a blessing. So
yeah, that is great.
Mhm.
I mean, I know I never want my family to think we're in dire straits, because we have all these, like, fail safes, but we also are not, we're not eating out this month. We're cooking at home like everybody else in America that needs to save money. So there's just these times where you tighten your belt. And I don't know if we'll ever get to the end of our career without having to tighten our belt at times or not. I really hope my daughter rebels and becomes like a doctor. But
Stay out of the family business, honey, please.
yeah. Anytime she hints at, like, wanting to do comedy, I'm like,
You're like, oh, don't do that.
isn't that great?
pushing her right into
I
it.
do it in Indiana.
Pushing her right into
Got to
it.
pick one.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just invite us back for a separate conversation about money management and how you can, because it is hard. Stand up is hard in general on the psyche, emotionally, and for the long haul. You really have to you're committed to it, and there's like highs and lows, and it's all a mental balance of not getting sucked into the disappointments and really enjoying, like, the opportunities and taking advantage of them, so that when you throw money into the mix, it just makes it looks nothing like your peers, especially if you're starting at a different point in life. So maybe you've had a chance to do a lot of things your peers did, but when you're in your 20s, everybody's buying a house, everybody's getting married. You're typically not. You're sacrificing those kind of things so that you can invest in yourself, in your career. And then,
Yeah,
So-
right. Because my biggest sacrifice now is time with my family. But having been a coach and some of those other things, I was actually out of the house way more from like 3 to 9 every day. So getting off
Mhm.
the bus and dinner was not a possibility. Where now dinner and getting them off the bus is what I do. And then they're in bed. And that's when I shoot off to the mics at night,
Right. Yeah. Since this is a family like oriented podcast, I will say we have certain deal breakers. Like we have to have health insurance. We have to have dinner together. Like there are things that we do that we don't let the career, get in the way of.
I think that's a beautiful idea. I mean, that makes perfect sense. I think in every career in every family, that should really be like a cornerstone, right? We're going to have dinner together, or we're going to make time for each other on this day, on that day. This is family time. Put the electronics down. That's a big deal, right? Because you don't get that time back. You know what I mean? We all know you're not going to get it back. You think you have all this time. I mean, I would put my head on a pillow and I woke up. My daughter was 8 years old, and I'm like, "What just happened?" And it's gone. It's gone, right? It's never going to happen again.
Effect.
Oh my gosh, it's fun to watch, but it happens so fast, and it's like, wow, I wish we would have. And I think that's the biggest thing about you want to eliminate the "I wish I would have" with my daughter. I don't want to be sitting there going, baby girl, I wish I would have X, Y, and Z. I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? So.
Absolutely. Yeah. The beautiful thing, especially with you, Albert, is that you get to stop aging now. Now that she will accelerate and you can just be
okay. I'm good with that. I like
the
that.
rest of your life.
They got 32, got 30. There you go. Yes. 32 for the rest of my life.
Well, I'm a Hollywood 29.
He's
so I don't
Hollywood
know about-
29 right here.
Yeah.
Good.
I have to add this grade just for fun so I can get respect. But
That's awesome.
yeah. Oh, what'd you make me think of? I was gonna say the thing about the kid and then the age. Oh well, it'll come back to me.
Well, the next time.
Next time,
Thanks
yeah.
for
Definitely.
having me.
There's so
Yeah,
much
you
to take
definitely
into it.
impressed upon me that we need to go get her off a device now.
Yeah. Get
Sure,
her,
that's
get her
stuff.
out of New York City immediately.
Yeah.
You're stressing that young lady out. So
I know.
I'll tell that's the beauty of this is just getting together with other parents, and then the fact that we were comedians. Like there's a part there that I think even the average person listening is like, oh, okay, there's those same compromises. Maybe I thought this was a frivolous thing they're doing, but oh no, as a matter of fact, there's so much extra things, all those fail safes you talked about, all those other things you have to think about while still being able to entertain other people is impressive. So thank you guys so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Abby and Luke, you got the last word. What's
Can
up?
I do this one last thing?
Yeah,
Of
Please.
course.
Holidays and birthdays. Like there is no holiday or birthday that is sacred, sadly. And that's the one compromise I think people at home should know, that like if you think, oh, they got it all figured out, it's like I still can't keep work from happening on these dates. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And not acquiesce. It's like, well, we gotta pay rent, so. But so there's that.
we're
But
doing
we
it.
still like celebrate. We just never do it on the day of, because typically for entertainment, you're working.
That's
on
the
time where everybody
day.
else is chilling out.
Right. If all goes as planned, you're
Actually, I
working.
was at Church of Satire for New Year's Eve. That's where I was at for this. That was the first time that I had like a holiday
you
that
had to
my
leave.
wife and
Oh,
I
okay.
weren't together and had that. So we're starting to get into that, and that's something that I think my wife and I are always a little non-traditionalist. So we can
Oh, there you go.
as long as you have the time and you make the time. What does it matter?
And
What is
hopefully,
time?
hopefully he
What is
paid you
time?
extra.
What is time?
So Abby and Luke are going to give you the last word. I know, Luke, you have a show. Abby, if you have anything you want to plug, throw it in there, and then we'll be signing out.
Yeah. We work together on the Kid is in School podcast. We talk about anything we want while the kid is in school. So definitely listen to that anywhere you listen to your podcasts. It's great. We release a new episode every Tuesday.
Yeah, and you could just follow us at Comedian Luke or Curly Comedy, and on everything, on every social media platform. I got videos, clips, those type of things. I'm at the Comedy Cellar every Monday, but I'm also might be in your town. So, or if you want me in your town, just email me or shoot me a message on social media and request me.
Beautiful. All right. Seriously, Dad signing off. Albert Davis, Abby Crutchfield, Luke Thayer,
Thank you.
Jay Yoder.
Thanks,
Peace
guys.
out, everybody.
See you
Thank you,
next
guys.
Seriously, Dad? Seriously? Seriously, Dad?
Seriously, Dad?
Dad? Seriously?
Dad.
Seriously? Seriously?
How you doing? This is Neil Wood from the Cult of Us podcast, speaking on behalf of Drop 10 Media Network, the network you're currently listening to. Make sure to check out all the other podcasts on the network. You can go to drop10.com to check them all out. Make sure to like, subscribe on everything that you see Drop 10 on. We appreciate it. Go to drop10.com now.
This has been a Drop Tent Media production.